Our next two speakers are Matthew Boyle and Ryan Rath. Matthew Boyle is a manager of incident response consulting at Mandiant and a part of Google Cloud. He is a cybersecurity professional with over 18 years of military and national security experience. He is a subject matter expert, SME, in incident response, penetration testing, secure architecture, malware analysis, and virtualizing training testing environments. Ryan Rath, the co-speaker, is a senior incident response consultant with Mandiant and also a part of Google. His cybersecurity journey started after his 10-year service in the U.S. Marines. He has led and assisted in over 100 incident response investigations, tackling a wide spectrum of cyber threats ranging from nation-state actors and ransomware events to business email compromises and election protection engagements. Ryan is currently a consultant at Mandiant, a project manager for Google Space, and a lead instructor for Threat Space. Please welcome Matt and Ryan with Who Let the Dogs Out When Your Pups Become BlackCat's Best Friend.
All right. Hey, good morning, B-Sides. Thank you all so much for having us out here. I'm definitely very glad not to have to follow Bryson immediately. So thank you all for joining us. Matt, I'll turn it over to you.
All right, whoop, that's loud. Like Ryan said, happy to be here. Glad everyone came to our talk. Glad I'm not directly following Bryson. So just a brief overview of what we're going to talk about. We'll probably hit the bios extremely quickly since we had a great introduction there. Just going over some overview of what BlackCat ALPHV is and what PUPs are, just so everyone's on the same page. We know there's kind of a wide variety in the community of seasoned experts and novices, so we just want to make sure we're all talking about the same thing there. Then we're going to go into the fun part that you're all here for, talking about some war stories from incident response cases that we've worked, and then talk a little bit of prevention and detection. We'll share some indicators of compromise or IOCs that we can share. Little overview on the war stories and the IOCs. Obviously, our customers' relationship is confidential, so we're going to have to be really careful about what we can and can't talk about and how we talk about things. But as long as you bear with us, we'll definitely make it educational and hopefully entertaining for everyone. Cool. My bio. Background in the military, just like Ryan, came to Mandiant about 7 years ago. I've been doing incident response, threat hunting since then, so it's always a blast.
Yep, and I just passed my 3-year mark here at Mandiant. Super glad to be here. Ready to get talking. It's a fun talk, and definitely we'll answer as many questions as we can, but unfortunately can't share too much.
Cool. All right, so what's BlackCat? And at least off of Ryan and I talking with people beforehand, we have to make sure we emphasize the cat part, because at least with me, it sounds like I'm saying black hat, and that kind of confuses people. But BlackCat uses ALPHV ransomware, or used to before they got rolled up. But they do ransomware as a service. They have initial access brokers that give them access. They run their malware. They extort data theft, as well as charge people to get their data back. So they're particularly forceful with that. We've had customers where BlackCat would call CEOs' spouses at 2 in the morning and threaten them that they need to pay ransomware. It's not just a out-of-the-box ransomware, go to this link, pay us type thing. They're really forceful and kind of go that extra mile of vengeance.
Yeah, they really go that extra mile to make sure they get paid. I mean, they've been noted to release very unfavorable things to people who are going through an incredibly difficult time in their life. So to try and use them as leverage to get paid is probably one of the worst groups that I've seen personally. So.
Kind of to dovetail on what we were just talking about with FBI law enforcement getting involved and being able to shut them down. We've seen this before with other ransomware groups where they just come back a few months to a year later as a different name and do updated software. So great that we, the government, was able to shut them down, but I don't think that's going to be the end of ransomware.
I don't think so. I'm sure everybody's kept up with the latest saga of what's going on with BlackCat and the FBI takedown of their infrastructure. But as we've seen time and time again, they tend to shift and adapt and crop up in other ways. So we have no doubt that we'll be working with them again.
Cool. And then, like I said, just to get everyone on the same page, what is a PUP, potentially unwanted program? For anyone that's been a SOC analyst in the past, these are those annoying alerts of like, okay, why do I care? Maybe it's adware or something that's annoying to a user, but my antivirus keeps popping on these alerts and stuff. And in the past, yeah, that's fine. We ignore it, have them uninstalled, maybe don't take as much action on it as it's needed, but we've seen an uptick with especially with BlackCat, using those lower level of things that would alert to get initial access, gain entry into the network. So just trying to bring awareness to that and let people know that they need to, lost our slides. This will be fun. Pay more attention to it. I know there's alert fatigue and dealing with alerts that are a lot of false positives or maybe not that high level of fidelity. So just something to look out for.
All right, so we're gonna go ahead and get into some of our war stories. So over the last 12 months, we've had 3 incidences that we have worked, and they all kind of followed a similar theme with a similar threat actor. You're talking about BlackCat, but we've seen them really leverage malvertising campaigns and running them through backdoor administrator programs. So we have the trojanized Rufus, which had the VIDAR data miner also packed in with it, a trojanized advanced IP scanner, as well as that drop the reverse shell, and then the trojanized Wireshark that was really heavy on PowerShell, or Python exploits, and using that to laterally move. And an interesting thing about the Wireshark, from the time that the administrator downloaded and executed Wireshark, the threat actor was in their environment within 20 minutes, actively hands-on keyboard. So it was pretty astonishing to me to see how quick they went from somebody random downloading, a trojanized version of Wireshark to being hands-on keyboard, laterally moving, collecting credentials. But yeah, let's go ahead and, what's that? Malicious advertising campaigns. So yeah, essentially they would pay advertising for their spot at the top of the search.
Yeah, we go a little bit into detail on each of those too. So, but I think the last 2 also combine that with typo squatting. So slightly different spelled name or switching like a 1 for an L type thing to make it look like it's the legitimate site. So, all right. So a little shout out to one of our teammates, Nando. He likes to give presentations too. So
yeah, if anybody doesn't know Fernando Tomlinson, he speaks quite oftenly. He is a fantastic speaker. I'm a huge meme person, kind of got squashed on my ability to add them, but Nando volunteered for me, let me use him as our meme in this one. So thank you to Nando. Go ahead.
Awesome, cool. So as Ryan was talking about, the first case was a domain admin downloaded Rufus to make bootable images for systems, and searched up Rufus, clicked the first link that happened to be an ad instead of the legitimate link to the true source of the web or of the software, downloaded a zip file that was infected, or the binary inside of it. So that's another tactic we've seen where the malware will be put inside of a zip file. So when it gets extracted, it'll lose that zone identifier saying that the file was downloaded. So a lot of antivirus will flag off of that. This one particularly also was very large file. So most antiviruses cap how large of a file they'll actually scan, normally around 25 to 50 megabytes by default. A lot of them let you make that larger. Obviously, that's a performance trade-off you got to deal with there. But in this case, I want to say that the actual binary was about 500 megabytes. So most AVs wouldn't even look at it. In this case, it did flag as VIDAR. The local team did some remediation, and unfortunately, they changed the user's password, and he had not been he'd not used his domain admin account on that system, so they thought it was okay. But the malware actually stole his cache credentials from his web browser for using the web login through RDS to other systems. So they caught it, they did some remediation, but they missed his domain admin account.
Yeah, so the Vidar stealer grabbed all his info from the browser. Very unfortunate. They thought what they did was the correct actions to take for remediation. They changed all of his passwords, so they thought. And in this case, there was kind of an extra hitch. So the company that the system administrator was working on was an acquired company. And they had just established a two-way trust between that company and theirs. Naturally, you can see where this is going to go. Grab the credentials. They forgot about that one specific account. And of course, that account was, it came to them the URL to their RDP login site that they had forgotten about for the acquired company. So the threat actor knew exactly where to go and with what credentials. We saw them do a test login pretty shortly after the initial infection. And this was all looking back. So they did the remediation and everybody forgot about it. Something happened and then we came back in. And fortunately, through the documentation, we were able to find this event and be able to trace it back. So some of the things we're talking about around is through that lens. But we ended up seeing them do a test connection, and then they went dormant for about 30-ish days. And then we see them log in again straight to the environment, and they immediately start attacking the entire domain, both domains.
Yep. So here's the example of. Oh, this is the next one. Sorry, we have attack path diagrams for the last two, but we didn't have one for this one. So this is the next engagement.
Awesome. So this one's the same song and dance. This one happened to be with Advanced IP Scanner. It ended up coming from, you can read that, the typo squatted domain. Yeah, the ADWANCE, pretty low bar. Actually, this one I'm not familiar if the user actually typed that in or if they ended up pulling that from.
I believe that was also malvertising.
Malvertising campaign, yeah. And that one came in an ISO. So zip files and ISOs are the trending theme here for when you're getting malicious copies of your server. Just for, as Matt said earlier, it does not give it the mark of the web, so it doesn't pull additional scrutiny down from security devices. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah. So it's more so for in search engines. So you can pay to have your company promoted. Bad actors are also able to eventually get through. There's tons of safeguards in place, but when you talk about a scale of the entire world economy, essentially anybody can purchase an advertisement and have their ad placed for their specific markets, their specific places. That's probably millions on a scale of millions a day for new requests. So they have lots of automated processes. Threat actors have also found a way to use redirectors so that way it goes through a few different channels before. So when they do the initial search of the submitted URL link and the website, that's all good. And then as soon as their ad goes live, they'll switch their redirector over to their list. So, yeah,
no worries. Anytime. And if anyone has any questions, we'll have time at the end too, but feel free to ask them in the middle. So we're all here to learn and share. Real fast to go back, the timeline there. So from when the credentials were stolen until they were tested was 2 months. A month later, we hypothesized what happened was an initial access broker sold those credentials to the ransomware as a service. They tested them, validated that they worked. Were around in the network for about a month, stealing data to be able to extort the company. And then a month after that is when the encryption started. So that was our older case. Some of the newer ones, like this one and the next one, you'll see that dwell time, the time that the attacker is in the network, shrinking, because the longer they're in the network, the more chances they are to get caught. But also kind of the advanced state of the actor is that they know how to find what they need to find quicker and exfil it out of the environment. So in this case, the attacker was there about a month before they started encrypting, and once the encryption started is when the phone rang for us. Go back to Bryson's talk. He said that it's 4:50 on a Friday. Normally by the time they call the incident responders in, it's 7 o'clock on a Friday. So
Yeah. I try and sleep in on Fridays, not because I'm lazy, but because I know that 4:30 call is coming. We've always have.
And here's our attack path diagram, and it shows, normally we'd have the date timestamp and all that, but to help with anonymity here, we're just talking about from day 0 when they got initial access to day 1 when they started doing lateral movement. In this case, they also had ransomware that was, their main ransomware worked on Windows. In this case, they had ESXi ransomware that went through, enumerated all of the devices on their ESXi server, deleted all of the backups, and then encrypted the running, or or powered down all the systems, and then encrypted the hard drives. So they had no backups, or they had backups, but they deleted all the backups.
Yeah, so this is a fun slide. I'm sure everybody has been aware of, the ESXi targets that the threat actors have been going after, and that has become such a problem that we have at Mandiant, we have lots of hardening guides. That one is probably one of our most popular hardening guides that we can provide customers. Everybody has an ESXi environment for now, but it is just such a heartbreaker to hear when we go into a client like, oh yeah, they got a ESXi box and they were able to encrypt it and remove all of the backups. Well, cool. Did you have them off site? No, they were all locally on the box and the network. So, it's always a pretty hard story to hear, one we hear quite often.
And again, to just kind of bring everyone on the same page, ESXi is a virtualization server from VMware, lets you run servers virtually on the main host. So basically all of the virtual infrastructure for this customer was, all the backups were deleted and all the servers themselves were encrypted. And as you can see, they started exfiltrating the data 21 days into the attack, and then didn't start actually encrypting the servers and getting all the ransomware running until 17 days later. So.
Yeah, we can start to see them get a little noisier as well as they progress, as we caught them trying to deploy a beacon payload to one of their systems. And that's also the same day that they were.
And as far as TTPs, in this case, they had heavily used sysvol to stage all of their tools. So they put a Python interpreter on sysvol, they put all their code on sysvol, and then that way they could use scheduled tasks, they could use RPCs to have all the systems reliably be able to call the code without having to drop the code on every single system, and then give more opportunities for detection.
Yeah, so the last one we're going to talk about was a Wireshark instance. Let's see, I think it was downloaded in a zip file as well. This one was the one I was talking about earlier, where it was pretty crazy that they went from downloading the Wireshark copy, and within 20 minutes they were back. The attacker was actively hands-on keyboard within the network. With this, it was a Python reverse shell that they were running in this one. I didn't work this case. Unfortunately, it sounded like a fun one, but I was always curious if they, because Python doesn't come installed by default on most systems. So I never really got the link there of how they were able to get that payload back.
They bring, at least in these cases, they brought their own portable version. And like I said, at least in the last one, I think they did on this one too, they placed it on sysvol, which is a universally accessible location. And as you can see in this case, they use typo squatting again, where Wireshark has 2 H's instead of 1. Unless someone said, hey, what's wrong with that URL, and you had to go look at it and try to find that, you're probably just going to glance over and be like, oh, it says Wireshark, and go ahead and click there and download from that, thinking it's the legitimate source of the software. And to harp on the dwell time, in this case, from initial access to when encryption started was only 10 days. So if you think back to the first case, that was a pretty long chain where it was about 4 months. If you look at all the activity put together, the last one was about 38 days. In this case, it went down to 10. So they're moving a lot quicker.
Yeah, and so this is the attack path for this engagement that we were working. We can follow the numbers there, 1, 2, 3. So we can see the user search for Wireshark, downloaded it. And then let's see, yeah, 1450. So they downloaded at 1424. At 1450 is when we start seeing lateral movement across the network. That one kind of astonished me just in how small and how quick that dwell time was. Most security organizations, especially when it's administrators running some of these things, SOCs tend to, oh yeah, that's a system administrator. He knows what he's doing. Probably fine. Looks like it was just Wireshark. Must be Wireshark. So yeah, that's one of the things we see quite commonly is system administrators who are compromised, they get kind of an extra pass from SOC teams. Don't do that. If you're on the SOC or if you're going to be working in the SOC, make sure that you scrutinize every alert to the best of your ability. Don't hand wave it just because somebody's doing something weird, or if you got pen testers in your network. Those are always fun accounts. They do weird things, but they also download things from the internet to run their tools, which is where we start to see some of these engagements pop off for us.
Yeah, and kind of to tie the theme across all three, in all three of these cases, it was someone with either elevated permissions, sysadmin, a domain admin, downloading software off the internet without validating that they had the legitimate copy. Go ahead. But, I mean, there is, with these, it was also the legitimate software, so it would drop the payload. In the first case, it was Vidar. It stole the credentials, sent them back. In that case, not only did their antivirus detect that, but also their network monitoring saw the connection, sending the data back, and it just wasn't properly remediated. On these cases, I'm trying to remember what alerts they saw, but it just didn't hit that threshold for them. We know that the fight's real, or the struggle is real. There's alert fatigue. There's a lot of things going on at a SOC. Unless you're seeing something that like says Cobalt Strike or someone dropped your NTS.dit, it kind of depends on how fast someone reacts to something. But
and so we do respond to quite a number of the 0 days out there that they're on edge devices like Avante, right? Nobody can really defend against that well. But for things like this, it is a lot of the SOC personality and the security team. Depends on their level of visibility, how far they actually want to look. It's that trust that they have in that system administrator, like, oh, it's just Adam doing Adam things. It's there's so many variables in the real world that when you get out there, it gets messy quick. And yeah, sometimes things get through, and it is unfortunate. This is a lot of the result of it. Yeah, that's a good question. I'm not familiar with what EDRs they had in these cases, but
yeah, I was real familiar with the first one, but that was a lot of hours. I think I don't remember if I think these were the last two were smaller environments. I don't even know if they had like a legitimate SOC or just someone that was kind of like, oh, you're also the guy that looks at alerts when you're not being a sysadmin or doing whatever your three other jobs happen to be. So like definitely no victim shaming here. We understand that there's a lot of long hours and difficult work involved. So just trying to help share information so people know what to look out for, kind of see a trend of what's going out there in the community.
Yeah, and that was really how this talk was born. As we saw, this was three in a not in a row, but three in a very short time period of window where we see malicious advertising campaigns lead to a ransomware event. And sure enough, once we peel back some of the IOCs, our intel team is amazing at being able to correlate some of the things and then also do their own stuff, but they were able to correlate all of these activities back to the BlackCat threat actor group specifically. So,
thanks for your questions. So going back to prevention and detection, number one, don't download or execute anything that you aren't 100% sure is exactly what it's supposed to be. And I know that's hard. And unfortunately, the people that should know better tend to be the ones that have the ability to do this. So like someone that's a system admin or knows the guy that's in charge of the web file or the web proxy also can get some special help making his life easier or her life, but in the end kind of bites them.
And then, so the second one is my favorite, low-key favorite recommendation to make to companies. I can't tell you how many business email compromises I've worked in the last few months even, where this is coming to an issue where, malicious JavaScript file was downloaded in a zip file, and then immediately from there, Windows automatically has it linked to run JavaScript with MSHTA. That is a very powerful way to get initial access. It's a very powerful way to maintain persistence. But in Windows, in a simple GPO that you can push to any device with relatively low impact, obviously every environment's different, but if you unlink those to their appropriate programs, so HTA and JavaScript file, if you unlink them from automatically opening in MSHTA, if you have it open with a text editor, say, or you can have any other program open it if you want to create an interesting detection rule in your SIM, so you can see when users start to click on JavaScript files that would have been opened by MSHTA. It's something that's so, the barrier to entry to get that set up in your environment is pretty low, and I think the cost reward to having that implemented is pretty high. So it's a great recommendation that I like to make in all those cases, and most organizations have it implemented before the end of the day when I make it. So yeah.
And definitely the really nice thing about that, a lot of security is trade-offs, what works. In that case, I can't even remember an environment where that broke anything important, and it's easy to put in an exception if there's like one host that doesn't. Odds are if someone's supposed to be running JavaScript locally, which I don't know why they would, but they probably also are like, oh, it opened in the text editor, let me manually run it through the executable that it should be running, and they're back to where they should be anyway. Another important thing is to understand the baseline of your environment. Know what RDP, lateral movement type stuff is normal in your environment. That goes into like dual use technologies like PSExec. Lots of environments use that natively, but so do attackers. So just trying to figure out how to look at those living off the land binaries and know what that fingerprint looks like in your environment. Maybe set up a policy. Say, if you're running PSExec, it has to be in this folder. It has to be this version of PSExec, and then you can more easily alert on things that are different. There are also, we're kind of tool agnostic here, but there are definitely web proxies out there that look for those typo squatted domains, look for newly registered domains. If you're trying to download Wireshark from wireshark.com and it was registered a week ago, that's probably not the legitimate website since it's been around for a hot minute. So there's a lot of creative solutions there.
Yeah, and then so for ISO files, that's one of the ones that tends to trick quite a number of users, both some that are technically apt and those just general users who have no idea what an ISO file is. But so that once you click on that, it mounts that drive, and pretty much it can do quite a number of more things. So downloading ISO files is something you should alert on. Hopefully, it does not happen that often in your environment, so any alerts that you do have, something that your security team can evaluate quickly. Just kind of sift through and make sure, hey, this is good, this is bad, this person shouldn't be doing it, they did, that type of stuff.
Cool. And then, as we talked about before, indicators of compromise, just kind of going into that, those 32 character strings on the right-hand side are MD5 hashes. Those will help you uniquely identify files. You could look that up in VirusTotal or your resource of choice there. If you ever find a file, that's like my first go-to is, hey, let's look up the reputation of this file. Let's look and see if it's one, even out there. And then two, what do various AVs think about it? What do, what's the community think? Are there sandboxes that have run it? Give you more details. As far as the URLs, those are the typo squatted domains where advanced is spelled with a W instead of a V, and Wireshark has 2 H's. So we had a lot more IOCs that we couldn't share because the way ALPHV, which is the malware BlackCat runs, is custom built for each customer. So if we gave you those hashes, you could know who our customers were if they uploaded that to virus totals.
Yeah, that was a huge bummer for me. I'm a big share, just kind of brought up that way. Like I need to get all the data, all the pertinent data out, but unfortunately had to back quite a bit.
And kind of as an aside there, the progression of ransomware from a few years ago when we started taking cases like this on, unfortunately, the attackers have gotten a lot better. They've learned proper crypto. It used to be that there was a decent shot that the keys were with the encryptor. With our reverse engineering team, they could reverse engineer the keys, be able to save some of our customers, or maybe the keys were stored in memory. They've gone full best practices, unfortunately, on encryption now, where they're using public key encryption. The private key never leaves the attacker's hands until you pay the ransomware. So unfortunately, being able to save customers is becoming a lot more difficult. One thing to note with some of the recent takedowns that the FBI has been able to do, in some cases, they were able to get like the master keys when they took down the threat actors. So we have had situations where we're able to go back, either if it happened during a live investigation or after the fact, we can go and bring those decryptors back to their customers. So it's not all darkness there, but I wouldn't bet on it or hope for that.
Yeah.
Cool. So any questions? Okay, good. So I would say so we like to focus on the incident response side of that. So we're not necessarily privy to whether they pay. Sometimes we find out. I would say, just anecdotally, from when we do know they paid, they almost always, I can't think of a time when they didn't get a legitimate decryptor that actually gave them their data back. Unfortunately, one of the things ransomware gangs are best known for is their customer service, because if they don't give the keys, they don't get your data back, no one's ever going to pay them again. So it's actually kind of shocking how good customer service a lot of the ransomware organizations provide, and providing keys once they get their big payday. So
Did you have part two?
that I'm glad I don't know about.
Yeah, that one is more obfuscated from us. Sometimes we don't even find out until later through our own investigation that, oh my gosh, all of a sudden all these files are back on the server. So we really are pretty separated from some of those negotiations as far as whether they pay.
And then we have a decent, healthy mix of customers that have or don't have cyber insurance, are using their cyber insurance or not. And I guess it would depend on normally whether they get paid back by their provider, probably months down the line, and we're already 3 or 4 cases past that. So we tend to stay out of those things and just stick to the forensics and fun stuff, at least for us.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, like if they were trying to specifically target domain admins type of thing, or somebody, so for the Rufus one, I mean, most normal users have no idea what Rufus is, or probably would never need to use it. So I think that's part of the reason that they're targeting some of those, administrator tools specifically, so that way they can try and catch some of those system administrators if they actually download it. Yeah, I don't think we have.
Not that we know of, but part of what we do when we're investigating something like this, if we find something like a malvertising campaign, we'll either report it ourselves or have the customer report it, depending on what the situation is and what makes sense. But we'll definitely make sure that the companies involved know that that's happening and that they can do their own investigation to see if there's a trend or if they need to cancel certain accounts or not let certain accounts or a combination of indicators there have advertising campaigns in the future. So there's definitely a huge effort to try to cut down on that from the industry side. And there's definitely sharing that happens where, at least within Mandiant, when we find that, we definitely make sure that the right people are informed so that they can protect the rest of the community from having the same thing happen. Yep, of course.
All right, we got a couple more minutes. Do we have any more questions? Yeah, go ahead. So I know that the process that they do is very intensive, and the problem at Google, at least, is it's been explained to us, and I think it's pretty straightforward as its scale. It's when you start to see that volume of advertisement requests, that volume of stuff, you can put out a big net and you can hope to catch as much as you can. I think it is hopefully going to start getting better. We've since joining Google, I know I've had a lot of really good talks with different teams on what we're seeing, some of the TTPs and the strategies. So I think they're taking a lot of that feedback with those individual security teams that manage those products. And I think they are also improving. Also AI detections are getting much better. That's becoming more integrated into some of the processes. So hopefully that will help us be able to defend against these later. All right, one last round for questions. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah. Yeah, so I can't recall. I think it was the Wireshark one, but that did the same thing where it would drop the bat file, and then that's what they were using for their configuration malware in the back. Yeah, I don't think that we got that file, so that system must not have been.
And one thing on a lot of the difficulties on the ransomware investigations is, especially with the one where the ESXi server had all the backups deleted and then encrypted, a decent amount of that activity happened on the actual virtual servers that were encrypted. So it's a bit of a struggle sometimes to be able to tell that story and figure out what happened. In these cases, we got pretty lucky that one, that the situation played out the way it did, but two, that we have some top-notch incident responders that were able to find the smallest of breadcrumbs and pull it back. So.
Yeah, and talking to the VIDAR stealer, so that was, we were in there, it's a fairly large environment, the client was melting down, everybody was freaking out. There's very hard, long conversations to have with the client on what needs to happen. There's a big organization, so doing anything knee-jerk was not an option. So to be able to go through and deal with that, and then also try and figure out the initial access piece so that way you can make sure that the threat actor is not going to come back. We normally don't get that level of fidelity. We absolutely try, but this one was a great instance where one of our intel teams was looking through past incidences and intel, and he found that one event with the VIDAR stealer that they thought they remediated, weren't even thinking of, and then boom, that was their entry point.
Yeah. And if you recall, that was 4 months before we were there. So being able to find that was kind of a lucky thing on our end.
Very, very lucky.
You had a question? Yeah.
In it for an exchange server case.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on what the threat actor is trying to do. Well, two things. One, we've seen where that was the initial access vector, so that makes a lot of sense there. unless someone's trying specifically to steal email or find something that can help laterally move or use that to pivot to make better phishing campaigns, if it's a very targeted actor, normally, unless that was their initial way in, I haven't seen them specifically go for an Exchange server unless it made sense for their end mission that they were trying to achieve. Now, if they happen to just encrypt everything in the environment, that would sweep up the Exchange server, or if they were doing the ESXi thing and the Exchange server is virtual, then yeah, it would still get impacted that way.
Yeah, and so you mentioned something about the threat actors going to their ESXi and spinning up a VM, doing their stuff on there. That's a trend. So I've got friends in other regions that is common standard operating procedure. They'll start up a virtual session. They'll bring in all their toolkits. They'll work on that, especially if that image is, one specific instance. It's kind of an older ESXi. Nobody really paid attention to it, so it didn't have a good image on it. So it didn't have their CrowdStrike. It didn't have some of the other telemetry tools. It wasn't managed very well. Their golden image wasn't great. The threat actor took advantage of that, set up camp, did all of their activity, went to ransomware, and then their environment is gone as well. So that's a pretty big trend that I've noticed a lot in the last 6 months even. Yeah, go ahead.
I mean, I wouldn't say they were targeted. I think that was just kind of like Black Cat was casting a net, or whoever the initial access broker was just trying to get whatever they can get, and this is what they happened to get that day. Numbers game.
Yeah, it's a numbers game.
All right.
Well, if we have no more questions, thank you all so much for having us. Appreciate
Thanks,
you
everyone.
attending. Feel free to reach out if you guys want to talk after.